Good morning, how you doing? Welcome to Bum Nuts on Toast by the River on Fleurieu FM, steering you up until 12 o'clock on this thirsty Thursday. Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge our Ngarrindjeri elders, past, present and the future. We've got Aaron Buddy coming on today. Yeah, he's an artist in Adelaide. And he's coming on to have a bit of a chat with me today after the 10 o'clock news. So I think he's going to fire some stuff at me about Yowies. So what brings you down to Victor Harbour? I know what it is. You're going to be yarning to me about different things, aren't you?
I've come down to Victor Harbour to hear some of your experiences, and you've got some really unique stories to tell me. So I'm just an ordinary person who's come in out of nowhere, and I've got some big questions for you. So
okay, I know. I read some of the questions. I was thinking, oh my God. So what interests you in regards to? Oh, by the way, people, we're going to be yarning about Yowies because I announced you earlier. You see?
Good. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, you would have been in the car doing 150 k's to get down here.
Driving down, yeah.
Flat out, like you stole it.
Yeah, so not a Yowie hunter or a paranormal hunter myself,
right. Yep.
but absolutely so intrigued by it. And, your stories have really blown me away, caught my attention, so I had to speak to you.
Right.
I hope I can ask some questions, get some new information. So
you certainly can. When was your first kind of recollection of Yowies or Dooligahl?
Definitely, it's something that, as the internet is kind of flourishing and people are connecting up, people are talking about it more, and there's a lot more out there than there was, say, 5 years ago. So there's certain things I can certainly say that I've experienced, and other things I'm not so sure about. So hopefully I can sort of like run some things by you.
Okay, not a problem. So, where do we start?
What I've found really intriguing about this is that it's such a shut-down topic for a lot of people, and as soon as you bring it up, it's something they're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think might be the reason for that. Personally, my interest was actually piqued in it even more when I find that people react so strongly either against talking about it or sort of just avoiding it. And what is it about this?
Well, see, there was a lot of, it was with me too. Like ridicule. There was times when, and our elders told us, don't mention anything about these beings, excuse me, but there are people that I know that just won't say anything about it because they've been labelled as idiots, or or what's he smoking, or what's he been drunk again, or seeing things, or he's not on his medication, or stuff like that, But there are people where have rang me, this was before I come down to SA, and they've said, "Can we talk to you?" Or, "Can I talk to you?" And I'm, yeah. Okay, what about, and they talk about the Yowie, Dooligahl, and to me that was kind of like, okay, rightio, because not a lot of people open up about the encounters, or what they've seen, or what they think they've seen, or what they thought they'd smell. I had one particular husband and wife who live out in the bush. I've met them randomly in a beer garden because, we're just sitting around. They didn't want people to know where they lived or anything like that, but we sat and yarned about it. But I'm right to tell you guys about it now. But they were really, it was that bad with them that their livestock was going, and these are non-Aboriginal people, and their dogs went. They had about 5 or 6 dogs, and 2 or 3 of them would go missing. Chickens, all sorts of things would go missing, and they didn't understand what it was. And one day the father was out in the bush doing some fencing, and him and another bloke, and they actually come across, they had an encounter with a Yowie. And that's when he'd realised that how all these things were going missing, like his sheep, cattle, dogs, chickens, and things were getting moved around, and big boulders that humans can't lift, but these things were moving them and putting them around areas where they'd never had them before. They felt as if they could only speak to me, they had to move. They had to sell up their property and go because they just couldn't handle this anymore.
Right.
So they come to me and ask what we could do about it, what I could do about it, or if I knew anyone that could do anything about it. And I said, look, there's not really a lot you can do about it. You know, you're on their land, you know.
Yep.
And they've been here a long time before that place was built.
Yeah.
You know? But and excuse me, they've got the same thing as us, the Yowies I'm talking about. They've got the migrating thing where we'll walk about. They're like nomadic like us.
So not bound to any place in particular.
No.
So,
but there are areas which they travel.
Interesting.
And there's not just one of them. There's more than one. Because how can one be, say, for instance, in Katoomba in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales, and all of a sudden they're spotting one up around the Gold Coast, you know?
And I found it really interesting that there's so much variety in the descriptions of Dooligahl. Not the colour of them, from being quite dark to being quite red.
Yep.
Different sizes, different shapes.
Eyes.
Yeah.
You got the yellow eyes, you got the red eyes.
Different smells as well.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different smells. And that was one of the things this couple asked me about too. So they started smelling these beings or these things before they started seeing them. So,
interesting.
And that's what I said to them. I said, have you smelled anything before you actually... Well, the wife never got to see one until around about 5 months later or something when she was driving into town. And she happened to have a niece with her. And her niece kind of freaked out. Her niece was about 25 or something. And, well, these are older couple. Mm-hmm. And the niece freaked out. She couldn't handle it. She ended up having to go to like a psychiatrist.
Wow. So for the people that have these experiences, they're pretty central and pretty life-defining things, like if they're losing livestock and having to move house. If, so many people's experience with Yowie Dooligahl takes such a big place in their life. So why is so many people, they're so hesitant to bring it up and to seek people to speak to about it? And do you think there's a reason they might be coming out more to chat about this?
Yeah, that's what I've asked them. I've said, is it because you need to know? And they said, yeah, we need to know. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know who they were, where they were from, how often they come through. But they were seeing these things on a more regular basis because they'd only been there for about a year at this place.
So they don't have something to gain from trying to have this conversation. It's more about putting something to bed for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it just come to a head where they've said, right, we've got to go and see someone.
Yeah.
And when this lady took her niece to the doctors, the doctor more or less said, you've got to be, why are you like this? And when she mentioned Yowie, well, he kind of said, are you joking, eh? Or what's going on?
Shut down again.
Yeah, so, but with this couple, they decided to come forward because they needed to know, and so they spoke to me. And then I've put it toward my elders, and they've basically said, well, if you can live with them, but you can't get rid of them, but if you can handle them, keep living there, but they end up just packing up and moving.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there are people you need to go and speak to in order to further the information. And I need to sort of check, obviously, before I get too into it. Mm-hmm. I'm coming into this fully as just an open-minded learner, and I know that this information is pretty sacred and special. Mm-hmm. So am I disrespecting you in any way by asking about this?
No, because this is... See, the thing was, I've never spoken to anyone about this.
Yeah.
For years and years and years, I've kept a lot to myself. But I thought to myself, and I even I spoke to my elders first and told them what I was doing and saying, look, I'll just go to a word to our sponsors and I'll be back, all right? And then I'll tell you why I decided to do this, all right?
Fleurieu FM, from the hills to the coast.
All righty, back here with Aaron Baddick. Aaron, thank you once again. I decided to come forward because a lot of people need to know about Yowie.
So it's not so much that this is restricted information, it's a new conversation starting.
Yeah. But people have talked about over the years, and like my first encounter was a young bloke. I was only about 8, 9.
With your cousin getting water?
Yeah. But that's when I was about 14 when that happened with him. But when I was about 8, I had my first encounter when I was about 8. So, but over all the years, they've always been with me.
Do you think there's a reason for that?
Well, see, I didn't want to speak about them because I was told by my elders, keep this to ourselves, don't let it out, because, all of a sudden we're going to have a whole heap of people turning up in busloads, with their fancy cameras and everything, and roaming around the countryside going into people's properties when they're not supposed to, So that's one of the reasons why I didn't bring it up. But besides being told by my elders, not to say anything, but I decided to bring it up and talk about it because it's been on my mind for a long time. And other people have been talking about it. So I thought, well, I'm going to share my experiences and let them know what I've experienced. And I'd say 85% to 90% of my experience are almost the same as what the other people have experienced. But what they've seen, they couldn't believe. Like, I've got a presenter here that presents down here at Fleurieu. I won't mention his name, but he come in on the studio with me one day, and he's even had an encounter here in Adelaide, which is not too far away from here, actually.
Yeah.
And but he said to his mate, there was 2 of them, and he said to me, he said to his mate, "Did you see what I seen?" And he's going, "Yeah. Who do we get to talk to about this?" And said, "Nah, shut up. Keep to yourselves."
Wow.
But like I said, I want people to know that they're actually out there. And I've had people say to me, "Oh, you're losing your marbles, River." I'm going, "Yeah, right, okay, fair enough."
It's the first thing they kind of think. I guess it's hard to know how to respond to hearing this, even if you are a respectful person.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things for me that it kind of challenges really intensely in terms of thinking about, who man is and where we sit in the whole picture of everything, it goes against the idea that we're this lone species at the top of everything, standing there above the animal kingdom, and the concept of being made in the image of this and that, and kind of really challenges something deep in our existential, in the literature of everything, art and music and poetry. Is that why it could be maybe so hard for people to try and work into their understanding of the world?
Absolutely. I mean, like they're at the top of the food chain, as you were saying. But they've got, how can I say this? They've got powers. Well, they've got things that we'd never known about, and we still don't know. Like Dean and I were talking about when we were talking on FaceTime between ourselves, not on air, but it's where they're. How can I say this? It's really hard. Nighttime seems to be their thing.
Yeah.
They don't like to be seen, but they can see us at night better than what we can see through the day. You know what I'm saying? And they've got powers. When I first had my encounter, well, not first one, but later on in life, probably was around about 23, it's like down the track a bit, but I felt nauseous.
Yep.
Really nauseous, and that's when I was out rabbiting. But that's when I felt nauseous, I felt crook, and I never looked them in the eye. Yeah.
Right. And it seems to be something that comes up quite consistently with everyone's sightings, that there's that feeling of dread and fear, and that it sort of almost hits you before you see or smell or hear anything else. It's this feeling. So do you think there's something, you're saying that they've got a bit more to it in the sense that they can kind of channel that into people? Yeah. I'm really interested to know what Dreamtime's explanation could be for it, and sort of where it sits in the hierarchy of understanding, what's out there, and any kind of spiritual explanation there might be for what they are and what they kind of represent in the world.
Okay, that's a good question. See, there's us, there's them. They've been here a hell of a lot longer than us. They were here when our ancestors were around, and we just lived with them, and we still do. My uncle told me it was when everything was together before the Ice Age. They'd come across, you've got your Yeti, the abominable snowman, that same fella. You've got the Yowie, the Sasquatch, and you've got your Bigfoot. In different areas. And they all come under the same umbrella as what we've got here, the Yowie. In regards to our spiritual side, our Aboriginal side of things, is that they were our friends. They still are, but they were the ones. See, it's hard to say. See, with my uncle, for instance, right, he sat down and he's spoken to these beings, and in caves where they live, and he told. Well, I asked him. I said, Uncle, what do they say to you? And he said they don't want the encroachment of human beings, because everything's getting built now. Like there was areas where there was no farming, there was no houses. That was their land. They roamed through there all the time, and now they're starting to see more humans, and that's really peeing them off. This is our land. We don't want people building there. We like this is the Yowies talking. They'd be saying that's where we hunt. Now we can't hunt there anymore. So they've been here for a long, 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 long time, well before we come here. And another thing is, with the Yowie, you just don't get in their way, whatever you do. And like there's been about 4 of them, not 4 in a row. 4 of them. There was 2 that come up on me, like me and my mate, and we didn't even see them. We didn't even. We heard them, but we smelt them more than what we heard them.
Yep.
But they'd mutter, and we heard muttering, like,
Like a chatter.
Yeah, like
to each other?
Yeah, but the other one was probably 30 yards away. But they travel in pairs, and and I could hear this muttering, and my uncle said, "Look, that's their way of communicating with each other to let them know, or to let each other know that we're here." They'd be saying, "Hey, look over here. What are these fellas doing?" But I heard them muttering. I've heard them whistle. Like,
They seem pretty adept at using sound in general.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this huge variation in all the different ways they use it. There's screeching, screaming, uttering.
tree knocking.
Yeah, knocking, absolutely. Yeah.
I've had experience with tree knocks with them.
Right.
Oh, yeah, they'd be better half a K away.
Yeah.
And that's still a fair distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And next thing you know, they're up on you.
So they really use sound to kind of let you know that they're there.
Yeah.
You've spoken about playing a didgeridoo to let them know you're there.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think
that was out of Western New South Wales, that one.
Yeah, what might they perceive of that?
Well, I don't know, because when I bought the Yidiki out, because I could smell something, it was like burnt wire. And then the second smell I got was like rotten egg, gas, like wet dog, wet horse, that sort of smell.
Yeah.
But I thought, right. So instead of taking, like I always had a 22 in the ute, but instead of bring the gun out, because that's the one thing you don't do, they don't like guns. So I brought the Yidiki out, the didgeridoo. So I just sat there and started playing it. Well, I started getting rocks thrown at me. And they probably didn't like the tune, I'm not sure, but rocks thrown at me, branches thrown at me from trees and stuff like that.
Interesting. So they don't appreciate people being around in general, whether you're Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal.
No, that's right, exactly. And it was that sound. They've never heard it before.
Right.
Well, they probably would have, but
Yeah.
What is this sound? What is this person doing here? Why is this person here?
Mm-hmm.
And what is that? Is that some sort of a weapon they're going to use against me? But when I started playing, it was like like I said, they never heard it, but everything calmed down. It was, when I put it back in the ute is when one come up on me, but he was about 30 yards away. But that's when I was rabbiting, and we had cages of ferrets, like ferrets in the cage to put them down the rabbit warrens.
Yep. So he might have wanted something that he had
I
around.
reckon he was just peed off because we're at his rabbit warren.
Yep, fair enough.
And that's where he gets his food source from. And, that's why. And he was just swaying between these two gum trees. And I said to Clive, I said, hey, have a look here, brother. Mm-hmm. He said, I know I could smell him. And I was having a look at him.
So pretty territorial.
Oh, yeah.
Would you say more in an animal way or something you've got to be thinking more of in a human way?
In a human way. I mean, like, yeah, they both. Animal, human instincts, I've been come upon and had encounters which are different. Like that one at the rabbit warren, that was totally different than the one when I was with my cousin getting water. Mm-hmm. That's when the lad paralleled us.
Yep.
He was about 40 yards in the scrub walking along, and we were walking from the river with the buckets of water. And when we'd stop, he'd stop. And when we kept walking, he'd keep walking, And
almost like a show, a display of some kind of standoff.
Yeah.
Why do you reckon he appeared to you at that age? And do you have a...
Well, see, they're always fascinated with children. And what we were told is don't go out at night time, Stay inside, don't go out in the bush on your own. Because we were told that they'd take the kids away.
Mm-hmm.
And they do things to the kids,
Mm-hmm.
Bad things to the kids.
So it's pretty important in terms of having even just as a fable almost, it has a function of keeping the group together, and it kind of teaches you not to go out there in nighttime and stuff. Pretty important in that sense.
Yeah.
But then you've spoken as well about, we seem to have something different here with brown jacks that are sort of like a smaller version of the same thing. And
they're the little fellas.
Yeah.
They're different again.
Drawn to children?
They're just mischievous. They're mischievous little fellas. And they tend to play with kids more than the bigger fellas. The brown jacks always playful, mischievous, just like kids. Just like little kids. There was an incident where a friend of mine, I'll tell you the name of the place, Ngarrindjeri, which is Western New South Wales. I had a friend and his wife lived on a property out there, and their driveway went for about 5 kilometres. And the road comes down with a big steel gate that you open up and swings, the big gates that swing, you can swing on them. Well, I went and had the weekend there with them one time, and I got there about, 10 o'clock Friday morning. The young fella, James, he's at school. Anyway, Tony and Cheryl said they had to go into town. They're about 30 k's out of Ngarrindjeri. And they said, River. And I was there with my mate Tony, and I said, can you watch the place, or more than that, can you get James off the bus when he comes off school? Anyway, and the bus is probably only 20 feet away. I mean, the gate's only 20 feet away from the road. Mm-hmm. So anyway, come the time to go and pick them up, because they're still in town, the parents. So Tony and I went down on the motorbikes. Anyway, and we drive them down, and when we got there, we seen the bus going. So the bus had already dropped James off. But when we got down there was this other little fella swinging on this gate with him, see? And we were looking at him, but when we got closer, the other little lad shot off into the bush, see? Anyway, and James stood there, and James was only 7, and he's just waving to him, like, see you later type thing, Mm-hmm. Anyway, when we pulled up, I said, who was that fella there, James? And he said, oh, g'day, Uncle River. And I said, who was that little fella? And he said, oh, that's me mate. He comes and plays with me every afternoon when I get off the bus. Yeah. I'm going, really? And they're saying, yeah. And I said, how long you been doing this? And he said, oh, about, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks or something. I said, does Mum and Dad know? And he'd go, no.
Just part of normal life?
Yeah.
It's totally accepted by children almost.
Yeah.
Like, there's not that judgment and stigma. And
when he got home, I said, Harbour goes, what? And he's gone, yeah. He said, I've seen him there too, but I've never seen him to James. Like
interesting. So the adult experience of like a brown jack is really from a distance seen running off when you go and pick up the kids.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they are mischievous. My sister-in-law lived down Bunyips. That's the south coast of New South Wales. She was going into a place coming from Bunyips to a place called Wallaga Lake. It's about 11 k's difference, kilometres away. And they were in a taxi. and they were in the taxi, her and the 3 kids and the taxi driver. They had 2 brown jacks ran across in front of them. And the taxi driver has not been the same.
Yeah.
He doesn't drive cabs anymore.
Wow.
He's left the district. He moved up to Nara. Yeah, because he's had a few. I said, what, because of one sighting? She said, oh, no, he sees them all the time, but he just had enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can imagine it kind of really...
It was mentally stuffing him up.
Yeah, I bet. And that's something that you've touched on a little bit before. And I am interested to know sort of if you found yourself in a situation where you have seen these things and your life is sort of, you know, it's having a flow over effect on all kinds of things.
Yeah, look, I've sat there on my own and I've thought, now, do I just let these people know? Do I share my experiences with people, you know? Do I, where I was told not to? But like I said, I went to the elders and I spoke to them, I told them what I was going to do, and I did. And now I'm out here and I've put it out to America, I've put it up, you know, all around the place, as you know.
You've been listening to part 1 of a live radio interview with the Aboriginal elder River Morris about his encounters with the Dooligahl. 2, River will dive into dealing with the mental strain that follows an encounter, and we get a glimpse into some other entities that have significance to Aboriginal culture. It's coming up.
Once you've seen a yowie, you will never, ever, ever, ever forget it. Because you get that sense of being alone and you can't talk to anyone about what you've seen. You'll go mad. I've got to share this. I've got to let people know that they are not alone.